Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is April 3rd, 2018. Welcome to the evening edition of our live updates. Let's get right to it. We've got a lot to talk about tonight. Do a quick check at SPACEWEATHER.com, taking a look at our solar conditions right now. Wind speed sitting at 369.8 kilometers per second with a density of 2.8. Just like this morning, there are no sunspots occurred today. Sitting at 2 in a row without sunspots, 54 days for 2018. Currently, the KP indices has not changed at all. It was at a 0 this morning and still at a 0. 24-hour max also at a 2. Looking at our coronal hole right now, and it's still taking its time getting its way to Earth-facing position. Also, a weak corona right now as Earth-facing, peppered little tiny coronal holes, nothing major to worry about. We are expecting this solar wind to reach Earth as early as April 8th. And taking a look at our SDO right now, we'll go ahead and highlight the area that we are watching, this coronal hole right here. Also notice out here on the edge of the corona, this was another signature of this coronal hole as it was starting to come around the eastern limb. You could see right here the gap in between the corona. So very powerful. In the northern hemisphere, we are looking at some deterioration as well, but nothing to affect us geomagnetically. Taking a look at our TSI data this morning, I showed you guys some information from source. Here is the graph version of that information that I showed you this morning, and TSI numbers are still sitting at 1360.63. So we see a consistency of where the TSI has remained at a lower spot and is creeping downward very, very slowly. Today marks a very an old anniversary here. 44 years ago today, April 3rd, 1974, was known as one of the biggest tornado outbreaks in the history of the United States. And how ironic tonight that we are actually monitoring severe weather in that region, and I'll get to that here in a minute. But 44 years ago today, Xenia, Ohio, the hometown of mine, was hit with a F5 tornado. And I'm just going to read a little bit here from the Xenia Daily Gazette. 44 years ago today, the city of Xenia was leveled by a powerful F5 tornado. The Twister, part one of the worst tornado outbreaks in the history of the United States, injured 1,100 people, destroyed 1,400 buildings, and about half of those in Xenia, 9 schools, 9 churches, and nearly 180 businesses were destroyed. Now, part of that 180 businesses that was destroyed, my grandfather owned a Texaco gas station on South Detroit Street out there in Xenia. So we, as a family, the Rileys, we suffered losses as well. It was the second largest tornado outbreak on record for a single 24-hour period, and was also the most violent outbreak recorded with the 30 F4 to F5 tornadoes. Let me repeat that. There was 30 F4 to F5 tornadoes that day on April 3rd to April 4th, 1974. There were 148 tornadoes confirmed in 13 U.S. and Ontario, Canada. So this storm system was massive. It went from Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, and New York. The entire outbreak caused over $600 million in 1974 and extensively damaged approximately 900 square miles along a total combined path of 2,600 miles, according to online reports. At one point, as many as 15 separate tornadoes were ongoing at the same time. According to the reports, the tornado that formed near Bellbrook at about 4:30 p.m. as it moved northeast about 50 miles per hour, it intensified. The multi-vortex structure grew larger. As it approached Xenia, it flattened western part of Xenia. Xenia had no tornado sirens back then, but many were installed after, which helped alert residents to the September 2000 F4 tornado that hit the city. And by the way, and they're saying here that that tornado was parallel path of the one in 1974. that also affected my family once again. I had my grandparents lived on that side of town in 2004. That was a scary sight. It was an F4. It did not do the damage that the F5 tornado of 74, but it was still scary to drive up. Police lights everywhere. Power is out. I was just there to check on my grandparents, make sure they're okay. Here's an excerpt of the story written by Jack Jordan and Randy Blackbay, which was published in the XENIA Gazette April 4th, 1974. The downtown business district sustained varied degrees of damage. Some businesses were leveled to a point where identification could not be made. For example, all that could be found of what was once Mr. Donut Shop on North Allison Street were the stools standing alone like mushrooms with the building nowhere in sight. Across the street was Kroller Manufacturing Company, exemplified the terrible impact. A tractor-trailer rig was blown approximately 100 yards onto the roof of the Community Lanes bowling alley across the street, which, by the way, is no longer there. To the east, the wreckage of Penn Central freight train gained the most attention. It had been lifted from the tracks and thrown into the Kroger store parking lot to a nearby used car lot. Several fatalities are said connected with this. The Kroger store was obliterated. North of the town, Super Value on 52 East Market Street, which was another neighborhood I grew up in, was destroyed almost, and also all the older homes out there on North Street were destroyed. Little was left of Xenia High School as the mighty winds heavied school buses into the structure. Central Junior High sustained heavy damage, but nothing like the high school. A little quick story about the high school. My dad was a senior in high school in 1974 at Xenia High School. And he was leaving the high, here it is actually right there. That's part of the high school right there. That's what's left of it. My father had left just minutes before the tornado had hit. He was lifting weights with the baseball team at the time. So my dad was an athlete in high school, and who knew that if he wouldn't have gotten done with his workout just in the right amount of time, he could have been stuck in that tornado, and I wouldn't be here today, that's for sure. Also, other buildings that were damaged in Xenia that were significant was Central Junior High, which I believe we're getting ready to see footage from that here just in a second. But the field house, which is where all the basketball games were played, the roof had collapsed. Believe it or not, they did rebuild that roof, but if you go to that school now, it's very outdated. I think there's rumors that it might even be getting ready to close. They don't use the field house anymore. It's just not structurally sound. And now I can only imagine part of the reason why they don't want to use that facility anymore was that maybe, possibly, the damage from the 74 tornado was never fixed correctly. Because I do know my father coached sports. Here is, I believe this is Central Junior High right here. And here's the inside of the field house right there. My father coached basketball for Central Junior High. Or this might be Warner. This looks like the field house though. But anyway, there's leaks, structure problems with that place ever since the tornado. So this right here is Shawnee Park in Xenia, Ohio, next to the Armory. That's a massive structure. That was definitely, wow. I haven't seen these pictures in a long time, so I apologize if I'm stuttering here. That's Shawnee Park. That's the pavilion. The roof is ripped off of that. But I wanted to take a little time to share this tonight because it's an important day of our history. April 3rd, 1974, one of the largest tornado outbreaks in the history of the United States. 35 people died in Xenia. 33 died on the day of the tornado, and 2 died in the hospital afterwards. So I can tell you this, being from Xenia, growing up in Xenia, Ohio, people that lived through this tornado were forever scarred. My grandmother, every time the wind got over 10 miles an hour, she would run to the bathroom and hide in the bathtub until the thunderstorm was over. And that was just about every single storm that we ever had. So this was a very impactful storm. People will never forget this. Some of the stories, if you guys want to go through YouTube and look for Day of Destruction, Xenia tornado, there's a lot of heartbreaking stories, a lot of family finding their loved ones deceased or lying in the yard. Just, it was chaotic. And it looks like a war zone. And I know Mari went through some pictures and showed us the National Guard was there. The one thing I'll say about this is that the people in the area, all over the country. There was so much aid that was shipped in. The National Guard had to be called in to help secure the aid. That way there weren't any looters, because XENIA was just, it was not the same area after the tornado had hit, and it took years for them to recover economically, I can tell you that. And in 2004, minor blip, nothing like what happened in 74, and then here we are today. Just today, this was around 4:40 today. Let me see if they put the time in this. Okay, they didn't. There were tornado warnings today that were issued for 4:42 p.m. in Greene County and north side of XENIA. Now, this was just a radar indicated tornado, and as you see right here, it does appear that it is touching down, but it does not look like it's a very powerful tornado, and it looks like it lifts back up here. So maybe a brief touchdown from this. But I find it very ironic that 44 years ago to the day, and almost to the time, 4:30 p.m. was when the 74 tornado hit in XENIA. Here, this was just a brush little spin up. But still kind of eerie to see a tornado warning being issued 12 minutes after the exact time of the 74 tornado. Nice little lightning there. So I just wanted to kind of take a little time today, and, you know, being from XENIA, Ohio, this is a very sensitive subject for most people from XENIA. Along, also, we have other weather going on around the area today as well. We're talking about not just tornado threats, but we've got severe weather threat, and I'll show you that here in a minute. Here's another picture from Huber Heights, Ohio, another city that I'm familiar with as well. And this is a cul-de-sac out near Wayne High School. And I can tell you, there's not really a lot of areas with bodies of water around here, and they're flooded out in their court. So thank you, Angie Smith-Prechtel from Huber Heights, Ohio, classmate of mine. She sent me this photo to show me that she's getting ready to build an ark. They're not used to this kind of flooding in Huber Heights. Only a few times I've ever seen that kind of weather as well. Let's go ahead and take a look at our weather map. Actually, before we do that, I wanted to go back to Grand Solar Minimum real quick. A couple stories that we covered today. If you haven't been there yet, please go to our website. Check out the blog I wrote today about wood stove bans should be lifted. After finding an article on what's up with that, I'll go ahead and show you the link. They were talking about how the claim has been made out there that wood stove affects the climate more than you think. And I don't think they're saying that as an agreement. I think they're just stating that there's a claim out there. But I took a little time this morning to do a little piece about how we know that CO2 is not driving the climate. And in the future, if we lose power during a storm for more than a week or so, and it's in the middle of January, wood stove is going to help us cook. It's going to keep us hot. It's going to warm up water. There's just so many things that these things can do for us in the future in the Grand Solar Minimum, especially when the weather gets really cold. What if we lose power grid? How are we going to stay warm? As long as these things are installed properly by a professional and proper ventilation, there shouldn't be any problems with these. I know many of you out there listening right now grew up with these in your own homes, if not even further back. So, good time, check it out. Interesting article. Severe weather and watches and warnings. I posted this earlier as well. A quick overview of what was coming at the time when I put this up earlier today. Forecasted severe thunderstorms are expected this afternoon to the evening across a wide area from east central Texas northwestward to the lower mid-Mississippi Valley, Tennessee Valley, and Ohio Valley. Now, the threats are going to be damaging winds, large hail, and tornadoes are all threats. Localized flash flooding is also possible. I want to add to that really fast. As of 5:35, there were 80 flash flood reports across Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, and that had went up 30 flash flood reports in just an hour. So the intensity of these storms are picking up, and it's all coming from, well, right behind it is a very sharp cold front, and it's going to bring snow to the northeast. So after these storms race through the rest of the evening and tonight, it'll be cold enough for tomorrow. I know in the northeast here in western New York, we will experience some snowfall. While we're talking about the Midwest, Indiana smashes the April 1st snow records. Now, guys, 2 inches was the record set back in 1924. Places like West West Lafayette, who, by the way, are facing severe weather right now in tornado watch. They got 6 inches of snow, them in Rossville, just on April 1st. This smashes the record, 4 inches over the record. Lebanon, Indiana received 4 inches, and in Indianapolis, they've got 2 inches of snow on April 1st. I want to add also as well, Indianapolis today has over 3 inches of rainfall. So on Sunday, we were looking at snow covering the ground. Today, the streets are flooded. They've gotten over 3.3 inches of rain. And so I think they broke 2 records in 2 days. Within 24 hours of the days, they've broken a snow record and a rainfall in 1 day record. So some very, very interesting times right now, guys. Today was really jumped up a notch. This I found interesting. March 31st, we saw a 27-degree Fahrenheit temperature drop in 1 hour. Places like Grand Prairie dropped to negative 30 Celsius overnight, breaking an 83-year-old record. Pincher Creek hit negative 21 Celsius, again, edging an 82-year record. So we are seeing these records being set and broke from 80, almost 90 years ago. But to talk about this kind of cold, folks, negative 22 Fahrenheit in Grand Prairie. And the area that dropped so quickly was around Alberta. And within an hour, they dropped 27 degrees Fahrenheit. So extreme cold coming from the Arctic. I have to correct that from Rod. I don't want to tell everyone that the cold air is coming from Canada. It's coming from the North Arctic, folks. And return of Iris. I think last week I wrote a little article about this, how it was going to decay. Well, guess what? It did decay, and then it re-intensified as of April 1st. And now we are looking at possible heavy rain and flooding already, to where Queensland has already experienced enough rain for the season. And here we have another cyclone making its way to Queensland. And one more quick rain story overseas in Portugal. 84% of the country was been in an extreme drought, and that is over now. They received 10.73 inches of rain. That's 4 times the amount that they normally get in 1 month, and that for March. The extreme drought started in 2017. They haven't seen a drought like this since 2005. Out of 60 reservoirs monitored, 32 are 80% or more capacity. Only 3 are below 40% compared to 23 in the state last month. It looks like here only 30% were full to capacity. So good news there. And of course, today we have breaking. New eruption starts at Piton de Lufornes in Reunion. I was just talking earlier this morning about how we have 31 active volcanoes. Now we have 32. This volcano has had more than 150 eruptions, however, but this has occurred since the 17th century. 1708, 1774, 1776, 1800, 1977, and 1986 have originated from fissures on the outer flanks of the caldera. So if you would, check that out on watchers.news. Again, thanks guys for always being out there to tell the truth about what's really happening in our climate. I know a lot of folks out there. It's hard. Mari and I work very hard to find some of these stories, and it takes a lot sometimes. All right, let's get to our weather now. Taking a look at our watches and warning boxes, and my oh my, look at the central part of this country. We have wind advisories. We have severe thunderstorm watches and warnings, tornado watches until 11 o'clock tonight, 8 o'clock tonight. Severe thunderstorm warnings, severe thunderstorm watches. And then in the north, we have snow that we really aren't even going to talk about that much tonight. The main focus right now is this severe outbreak that we're getting from Texas all the way through the Ohio Valley. Let's go ahead and take a look at our current radar. Oh, you. Look at you. It's making me update. Sorry, folks, for the delay. Here we go. All right, so now we're going to take a look at this. Let's zoom it out just a little bit. As you can see, folks, we are dealing with a huge line of thunderstorms that's racing through the south right now in Texas, Louisiana, up through Arkansas, Illinois, into Indiana, and by later this evening into tonight, we will see severe thunderstorms into the Ohio Valley. Another round of severe weather is possible for the overnight hours in areas that we've already seen severe weather today. And like I said earlier, just above that, we're looking at snow. I'm hearing as much as 19 inches of snow could fall in the upper Great Lakes near Michigan. Over a foot is expected in the northern peninsula of Michigan. So right now we're just trying to deal with the severe weather here in the south and the Midwest of the country. Several tornado warnings still in effect right now, as not only are we looking at this radar, but I'm also kind of keeping an eye on the live weather right now. Let's zoom in a little bit and take a quick look. Here's where we're expecting the next batch of thunderstorms and showers coming into Wheeling, West Virginia, Pittsburgh. Be on the lookout within the hour. Waynestown, Morgantown, you guys should be seeing some thunderstorm action here within the hour as well. Go back a little bit further. Dayton, Ohio, Cincinnati, you're just now getting out of it. Still raining in the eastern parts of town. A few more minutes and this storm should be passing through. We go to Owington, Kentucky. Hello to 97X out there. Owington, Kentucky. You're still in some pop-up showers, which should continue through the night. Louisville getting pounded again. And right behind that, like I said, folks, there's a strong cold front. And if you look at Evansville, this is the next batch. This is probably the area that meteorologists are going to be focusing on right now. Paducah, Evansville, Owensboro. I've already mentioned you guys. You're going to get hit again here. And this should bring in colder temperatures. And that's where we're going to be talking about snowfall up here in the Milwaukee area. We're talking about, guys, you're looking at between 3 to 8 inches of snow when it's all said and done after this storm rolls through. All right, let's go back here. I'm going to show off the weather real quick. We'll go take a look at tropical tidbits, do an outlook forecast. I want to look at temperatures too. Somebody said something about Hawaii, and I have to apologize, folks. There's so many regions that I don't cover, and if I get any updates about Hawaii weather, I will make sure to include it. I do apologize. So the person that left that comment, I will do a better job and try to figure out a way to incorporate Hawaii into our reports when it comes to dealing with weather here in the United States. Same with Alaska. Looking at tropical tidbits, as of right now, this is what it looks like this evening. You see the 2 pockets of heavy rain that will continue to go through the Ohio Valley onto the East Coast into tonight. That snow gets heavier. Thankfully, most of that heavy snow is going to stay on the Canadian side of the border. And as we race into Wednesday morning, we'll probably start off with some rain in New York, turning into snow later that day, light snow accumulations. New England, Northeast, looks like we're going to miss the majority of this. There might be some heavy snowfall possible on the far edges, but nothing too impressive for that storm. But wait, there's more. April 6th, Friday, into the weekend. This is a little bit heavier, might be a little bit more moderate. I know right now they're calling for 2 to 4 inches here in the Buffalo area. Still not really a whole lot for April 2nd. The ground has not been frozen, so this shouldn't be a big problem. But we see another low pressure system forming in the middle of the country, and it makes its way to the south again. And you guys will get your share of severe weather again late next week into the weekend. Just north of you in the Tennessee and Kentucky, Ohio valleys, they'll be receiving ice and snow, heavy amounts. This could be a pretty decent sized snowfall too by the time it's all said and done, but this will race off to the coast very fast as well. But fear not, here comes another system right out of the middle of the country. Again, more snow to the Midwest and upper northern plains. As we move into early week next week, again, the Northeast, light snow, but still we're talking about snow. Notice here to the south, still looking at heavy rainfall. And from here on out, I'm just going to put this on a loop and kind of show everybody the pattern that we're going to be looking at here for the rest of this month. And I think once you see the systems over and over and over again in the same spots, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the 5th one coming from the northwest, 5, 6. So there's a 7th one beginning at the very end of this run. So we've got 7 big low pressure systems to deal with here in the next 10 to 15 days easily. Take a look at our temperature outlook for the next several days. And, you know, Old Man Winter is hanging on. I mentioned earlier in the week that somebody is going to have to evict Old Man Winter. He paid his rent in March. He is not wanting to leave. So we're going to have to file eviction papers on this guy. We are at April 4th and still battling the cold polar air from the Arctic spilling in from Canada. And by the 7th of April, which is next week, I'm sorry, this weekend, was when we'll see that snowfall possibly here in New York, 3 to 5 inches. We get really cold once again in the northern plains. Now, they've broken all kinds of cold records up there in the northern plains. I'm sure they're done with this as well. So, and then we get to early next week, still cold in the Northeast, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois. We're still feeling like late March and not middle of April. So hopefully we start to see some temperatures leveling out, but it does not look promising over the next 10 to 12 days as winter is going to try to hang on. But right here at the end of this forecast model, we're starting to see a little bit of indication that the cold air might try to retreat up to the north, but I'm not going to hold my breath because it seems like every time we've tried to go over that and say, well, it looks like spring's just a week away, we get another week of cold air in certain regions of the United States. With that being said, Mari, is there any questions for me, or is anybody?
There's a lot of people like saying, what's this state doing? What's that state doing? Let's go to this state. And I'm just like, I don't know. That's hard to do live, isn't it, Jake?
It kind of is. As much as I would love to accommodate everyone with, you know, that particular region where you're living, I do apologize. I'll do the best that I can.
I want to say hi to Rob. I'm glad he's in the chat.
Rob.
He's missing like for 2 days for some reason. So we're happy.
We don't know what happened, buddy. We fixed that problem, hopefully, and we see you now. So welcome. Region X radio listeners, welcome as well. We are on Facebook, Twitter, you name it, we're out there. But as far as that goes, was there any specific questions? I know that everybody wants to know what's going on in their home state, but
you know, I'm having a hard time following the chat because I'm having some glitchy chat issues myself.
Okay.
Like Rob was having. I haven't seen anything. Someone asked something about volcanoes, but I have to scroll up and get it. So any questions,
email
topics,
us.
Anything, email us or
Yep.
just comment. And, you know, we'll make sure we highlight it tomorrow.
And I think Carlos Ramirez, he follows us on Twitter. I just wanted to give him a shout out. I see him tweeting out a lot of our tweets, and he supports us with information of his own. He's very sharp when it comes to Grand Solar Minimum. So, Carlos, thank you very much for supporting us.
We should pop his Twitter up tomorrow.
We could.
So
we could do that.
Can see what we're talking about with what he does.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for us tonight. Make sure you tune in tomorrow night for our live update and as well a morning edition of our solar reports. With that being said, we'll talk soon.